is the Rebel Author Podcast, where we talk about books, business, and occasionally bad words. Hello, Rebels, and welcome to episode 249 of the Rebel Author Podcast. Today is the big day. It is the annual Lessons Learned episode. Before we dive into the content, there is no normal intro because it is all me this week. However, just a begging plead, I will get on my knees for you, boys, girls, and people of the podcast world. But we are incredibly low on Rebel stories. So if you have one, if your nan has one, your granddad, your cousin, your sister, your aunt, your brother, your friend, your dog, your pet, whatever, please do send them into rebelauthorpodcast@gmail.com and Becca will slot you in. We are super desperate. Okay. It is now time for the 7 lessons I have learned in 5 years of writing full-time, or I should say in my 5th year of writing full-time. There is something super significant about a 5-year marker. Half a decade is quite the amount of time. I've made it past the I must survive and just keep paddling first year of self-employment. I made it past the second kind of year, which was more like habit forming, and then breaking those habits and reforming them in years 3 and 4. And year 5 felt like a shift and a move into something new. The loss of structure from the corporate world is gone. I've sort of gone through that honeymoon period of, oh my God, will I make it? And the honeymoon period of, oh, look, I can go to the post office at 10:30 in the morning. And, you know, we've gone to the point where actually this is just life now. I don't feel afraid or worried about, oh no, what if I have to go back? I'm long past that because I have a confidence born from the surety that I've made it through enough years to know that I will make it through more years. Now, when I left, I truly didn't know whether or not I would make it through that first year. And I honestly can say that I don't think I thought I'd make it through 5, not because I didn't believe in myself, just because it seemed like such a huge fucking mountain to climb. You know, that was Mount Everest to me back then, and I really wasn't sure. So I do feel proud of myself. I didn't realise I was going to say that. Obviously, I'm already ad-libbing here, but I am really fucking proud that I've made it this far. This review has been delayed by a good couple of months, but I hope that it is worth the wait because in my mind, this is without doubt the biggest year that I've had for so many reasons: mental health, emotional health, financial health. If you would like to go back and listen to years 1, 2, 3 and 4, then you can. I will link those in the show notes. Okay. So the first part of this is always the income update. And I guess I'm kind of shitting myself. I re-listened to the 4th annual Lessons Learned update before I started writing this. I always do that. I listen to the year before. And it's rare because I don't tend to re-listen to episodes because it is weird. No matter what, it's weird hearing yourself podcast or talk or whatever. Anywho, I re-listened and I had to laugh because in the intro episode, I said that I was slightly down on the previous year's income. So year 3 was slightly above year 4. But I thought that it would look very different by the end of year 5. And the thing is, it was such a throwaway comment at the time. I just chucked it out there. Like with the carelessness with which I lobbed it out, it made me laugh so much because I had no fucking idea. No idea. Oh dear, sweet, naive Sasha. You know when you have a gut feeling, you finally feel like it's your time. That's obviously must have been where I was. But you can't predict the future. It doesn't matter how much education you have. It doesn't matter how much you understand the market. You can never predict. I just had a feeling that things were shifting. And maybe actually the thing that was shifting was me. And it was all the kind of work that I'd done on myself. And so it wasn't necessarily reflective of what was going to happen with the Ruby pen name, but more reflective of the fact that I'd done the work. And so I then had that belief in myself. And actually, even talking that out and kind of going off script already, that feels right to me. Okay, so between year 3 and 4, my income dropped by 7.71%. So most of that was in sales as well, with book sales. So why was that? Well, the reason is that in 2022, I published my last nonfiction book. And saying that now in the middle of 2024, I can't quite believe that it's been 2 years. But July 2022 was when I launched The Anatomy of a Bestseller. I didn't launch a book again until February 2023, which is 7 months. And that, while isn't long in traditional publishing term, it's a fucking glacial age in the kind of old ways of rapid release in indie publishing. And the thing is, I then also swapped genre. And I've been talking about that as well. So everybody knew that I wasn't going to be publishing another nonfiction book immediately. And that, like, as I talked about in the Ruby Rowe pen name lessons learned episode, everybody knows that what you talk about matters, and what you talk about that you're excited about matters. And obviously I was talking more about Ruby at that point than I was the nonfiction. Since that point, my income has risen 140.43%, so 140% between year 4 and 5. And I didn't run the numbers, but I am already over and above that now. So I am looking at essentially from April the 1st, 2023 to the 31st of March, 2024. That is the tax year that I'm looking at. So I did promise that when I broke 6 figures that I'd do a Rachel Herron and I would give you actual numbers. And, like, to be perfectly honest, I'm kind of internally vomiting. My stomach feels uncomfortable. Like, I've got butterflies because not a lot of people talk about money. Not a lot of people talk about it openly and honestly. And a lot of people will judge, and it makes me nervous to do this. So be nice, guys, or I won't do it again. Okay? You've been warned. All right. So I broke 100K British pounds we're talking about here by the skin of my teeth. And I did the equivalent. I checked Google currency, and at the time I did the Google currency, it was about 130,000 US dollars, just over 130,000 US dollars, just over 102,500 British pounds. Now, look, you guys know I'm always completely honest with you, and bear in mind I am number one competition. I was a little bit miffed by this number. The reason I was miffed is because I was predicting about 10 grand higher. Now, the reason for that is because I was due to get paid at the end of March, but this year, the end of March was Easter, and so we had an extra long bank holiday. We had the bank holiday on the Friday and the Monday, and so we didn't get paid until the Tuesday, and that was already April, which means my tax accountancy system shut down the numbers of which I had previously had. So I think it would have been over 110,000. But obviously, the upside of that is I now get that money into this tax year. So this tax year is already off to a great start. Now, if I look at progress, so if I look at this calendar year as opposed to tax year, I've already broken 6 figures this calendar year. So in 2024, I've already broken 6 figures. And so look, you know, we can't predict the future. I don't know what's going to happen the rest of this year. I have no idea what the election will do. I have no idea if the second Kickstarter will work. If all of those things work, if the releases go well, then there's quite a significant chance that I will be a multi-6-figure author by the end of this calendar year. And of course, that means I'll be a multi-6-figure author by the end of the tax year at the end of March 2025 as well. But like I say, that is a big if. And, you know, I have no idea if that will happen. I also have no idea if TikTok will be banned. And if it is banned, that will significantly hamper my chances of being able to do that. Obviously, I will pivot and do something else in order to prevent it to sort of come crashing down. But that would be a big hit for me. So whilst, you know, striving towards becoming a multi-6-figure author is definitely what I'm trying to do, I'm not making that prediction. I'm just quietly hoping and praying that it does happen. I'm not going to count my, what is that phrase? Chickens, eggs, hens, whatever. I'm not counting them. I'm being cautious. Okay, so let's look at the numbers in detail then. The biggest change in year 5 is the amount of income coming from sales. So this jumped up by 31.5% in year 4 to 66.2% in year 5. What does that mean? So those figures are the percentage of my whole income. So in year 4, 31.5% of my total income was from sales. And in year 5, it was 66.2%. And I think by the end of year 6, it will be even higher than that. Let me be clear that I don't necessarily want that figure to be higher. Of course, it would be lovely to have, 100% of your income just from sales, but that wouldn't actually make me happy because it's really important to me that I have multiple streams of income. Of course, I want the number, the actual income number to be higher on sales, but it doesn't necessarily mean I want as a percentage of my income for that to be any higher. Now, I'm sure people would like to know the breakdown in, what came from where. I haven't done that analysis for last year, but I have subscribed to Scribe Count, so I can give you that analysis for this calendar year. So that would be 6 months of 2024. And at the moment, 69.9% of my income, that is sales based, has come from Amazon and 30.1% has come from Wide. The figure at the moment is tracking at 20.4% KU, 79.6% sales. That has swung up and down. At one point, it was as low as 10% KU. 90% sales, but it really does depend what happens. And I've just had another TikTok blow for the Girl Game series, which are in KU. So that is a little bit higher than normal. And then the other thing that I can tell you is that ebooks are currently 39.6%. Paperback is 27.7%, which is quite low. And that's because I've had 2 back-to-back TikToks go for the Girl Game series, whereas when I had House of Crimson Hearts the month prior, I was at about 57% paperback, paper and hardback, obviously. So yes, those are those numbers. And the other thing that I will say is that for this calendar year, I'm about to break 6 figures just in book sales. So this year 6 analysis, if you want it, I'll do a little bit more detail on that for you next time. But obviously it's tricky because I don't have a full year of this new type of larger income, so I can't give you a full analysis for that. So this is why you're hearing a little bit of back and forth between calendar year versus last tax year 5 of being full-time. And one of the things that happened in year 5 is that there was a corresponding drop in the percentage of my income that was freelance based, but that's mostly because the sales were so much higher and not because the amount that I was earning from freelance reduced hugely. It's because the amount of money that has come in from sales is up by 400% on what it was in year 4. So it's that offset, not because in year 5 I reduced the freelance, but year 6 you will see that difference. Now that said, I have now ceased doing freelance in the way that I was doing it. So for much of the 5 years I was working, I would say 50% of my time was given to freelance. Now I just do a little bit of consulting every quarter. So that figure, that percentage for year 6 is likely to be a single digit percentage. But this, for year 5, it was still 10.8%. Okay. The other positive is that the everything else column reduced too. So for those listeners who are not looking at the show notes, I put pie charts in the show notes and give the income breakdown. So book sales was 66.2%, freelance was 10.8%, everything else was 23%. And if you compare that to year 4, the everything else percentage was 30.8%. So it's quite a reduction. And, I think that is representative of the fact that I have tried very, very hard to reduce what I'm doing, especially with the aid of a very strict Clifton strengths coach. I think it's also representative of the fact that with a non-fiction business, there is so much more to do. Now, because I'm not pushing the non-fiction in the way that I was pushing it, there is naturally less to do. I'm getting less invites, I would say, to present on webinars and go on podcasts and things. They're not gone, but I'm definitely seeing a reduction in that. And I think that is reflective of the fact that I am spending more time writing fiction at the moment. And I think it's also representative of the fact that the type of events that are coming to me are different. So now I'm, being asked by readers to attend reader events, which I've never really done before. I've got one, not this weekend, next weekend, but that it's just funny how everything shifts and changes. And the thing is, I am slowly but surely recovering. I think I had run myself ragged trying to be everywhere and do everything, like inside of the non-fiction business, because there's just so much that you can do, and I naturally wanted to do it all. One other figure that I wanted to share is that I started Shopify in 2023 on December 13th, I think it was. And then, so this is now, as I record this, 6 months later. And the Shopify's turned over 18,500 British pounds. So it's doing 4 figures a month, which I believe that most of that has been generated through TikTok, because I'm not advertising. I will advertise, but at the moment I haven't set up any advertising to direct it to Shopify. It is all TikTok. And the thing is, whilst I do have a non-fiction web store on my Sacha Black website, it's not selling. Like, I can't even remember the last time I sold a book on there. So, and also it's only digital there as well. And I'm in a very different position than I was last year. The other thing that I know is really important to people when they hear these, figures that authors share is the context of income versus advertising. Now, I went back and I had a look, and I have spent approximately £5,300 on British pounds on Amazon ads over the course of the year. So that is a small percentage. It must be about 5% of my income is spent on advertising. That probably will go up, I think, as I want to expand and push the income boundaries. Of course, I will continue to do TikTok for as long as it is a viable source of traffic generation, but that won't be forever. Nothing stays forever. Nothing stays the same. So I, want to try and set up some advertising as a fallback. Now, I do believe that there was one BookBub this year which wasn't taken into that Amazon ads price. However, I'm in a very small niche, and from memory, it was about $150. So, maybe it's like £5,380 or something. And the other thing that I wanted to say is that this, of course, does not account for all my costs. That is not net profit, that is gross turnover. So within that figure, I have covers and edits and subscriptions and account software to pay for and all kinds of shit that we, pay for. So please don't think that those figures are my net income. They're really fucking not. But of course, compared to somebody who's spending 30%, 40% of their income on advertising, obviously my profit is significantly higher. That said, though, of all of this number stuff, the thing that I'm most proud of is that when I left my day job 5 years ago, 75% of my total income was from freelance sources, which means I was giving my time to other people. Now that is down to last year in year 5, it was down to 10.8%. This year, it's probably a couple of percent, if not less. It would probably be less than a percentage. So what I want to say is that for those of you who are new to this podcast, it's really important that you know that I am not an overnight success. I am not a unicorn. Whilst this explosion of income did happen rapidly, it was built off of years of work. Bear in mind that I started writing with intention in late 2013, 11 years ago. I first published in 2017. I quit my day job relying on freelance money in 2019. And it's only as of August 2023 that I could risk reducing that freelance reliance. But even in August 2023, it was still quite a significant risk because I didn't have enough months of proof that the girl games at that point were going to be reliable and consistent. So I published Girl Games in February 23. So March, April, May, June, July, August. So 6 months. So I had 6 months, but at that point it was still going to be tough. I was still going to struggle to know that I had the money for the edit or know that I had the money for a cover. My point is that it wasn't until December 2023, over a decade later, that I could reliably reduce my freelance income to basically zero and rely solely on my business income. 10 years. What do they say? Behind every overnight success is 10 years of work. But it was 11 years from the first word on the page, 6 years from first publishing. It was a long motherfucking journey to get here. And so please don't think that this happened overnight. The other thing that I wanted to just give you a quick update on was the assets. So there is a 5-year assets photo that I have put in, or a graphic I should say, into the show notes. So as I write this, I'm in the works of publishing my 21st book. I used to flip-flop on how many I had published because I wrote a couple that got combined and I ghost wrote another one. But for the sake of ease, from now on, I'm just counting my books that you can kind of see in the graphic. So I've got 10 non-fiction titles, 11 fiction titles, 2 self-narrated audiobooks, 3 rights licensed, with another one about to release in August, and 2 more rights licensed in that series. So I'll have 6 audiobooks rights licensed out. 2 Korean non-fiction titles are released, with a 3rd one on the way, and I am now commissioning my own German translations. I did try to have German translations picked up by a publisher, and I couldn't, there wasn't enough bite, so I thought, fuck it, I'm going to do it myself. And so I am investing in the whole Girl Games trilogy, and I probably won't release them until all 3 are ready. So I also took the decision to close my courses. So I did have 2 courses on this graphic and I closed it. I wasn't selling enough of them on a monthly basis to warrant the fees each month. And I felt that because I wasn't producing courses regularly enough, and also because I learnt that actually I much prefer live teaching, I didn't really want the responsibility of holding on to those courses when I didn't know if I was going to do any more or whether or not I was going to be able to update them. And if I'm selling them, then I want them to feel like they're current, even though, yes, I know that most of the content was evergreen. But still, there's just an air of responsibility that I need. And yes, I was selling them mostly around Black Friday, but I didn't feel right keeping them there anymore when I had moved on to new things. That's not to say that I won't do them again, or that I won't put my webinars on there that I do at some point in the future. But certainly for now, I have closed those down. And yeah, so never say never. I love teaching. I have always loved teaching. I'm number 4 learner. That's not going to change. Like, learners, one of their things, everybody drink, #learner. Everybody who is a learner likes to teach what they have learned. So that bit of me is not going away. I just feel like I'm in my fiction era right now. And so that brings me to lesson number 1. Lesson 1 is that all in works for me. This was really difficult to write because it felt like I was confessing something. I quit my day job to write fiction, but then I literally spent like 4 years not writing fiction, which wasn't great and made no sense. I worked through that and the kind of barriers that I had faced, which were many and varied with the fiction. And I released Trey, which was the 3rd and final book in my first young adult trilogy, in the April of 2022. And I released that knowing that it would flop, which it did. 2 years later, and it's still not back in the black financially. It hasn't paid for itself. I think I've sold maybe 250 copies. It really hasn't done an awful lot at all. And it was at that point that I was starting to feel like I just created a job for myself rather than running a business that I loved or creating a life that I wanted. So I knew that I had to do something, and I had to change the amount of time that I was spending on writing about writing and teaching about writing before I ended up resenting writing about writing, because that isn't what I want, given how much I love writing nonfiction books and learning the craft and reading craft books. I wanted to retain that delight and joy that I had in it. So I tried again, and I released The Anatomy of a Bestseller in July 2022. It was all right. It didn't launch as well as the previous book, The Anatomy of Prose, and admittedly, that was because it was a very rushed launch. We were heading out of the country for almost 3 weeks to my sister's wedding in South Africa. So I kind of threw the book out and hoped for the best, hoping that I had enough of a nonfiction audience that I wouldn't have to do an awful lot and it would sell a reasonable amount. I didn't, unsurprisingly, it didn't flop, but it didn't give me the increase in income that I had seen from the other launches and was hoping to see. I therefore wouldn't class it as a roaring success. It was just okay, which is a shame because I actually think it's one of my better nonfiction books. I think, Prose is the bestseller in terms of the nonfiction books. Then I would say The Anatomy of a Bestseller and Villains are on a par with each other. I think, though, purely based on the fact that I wrote them so much later in my career, Prose and Bestseller are probably the best books, literally because I knew more so I could teach more. The thing is, though, I, looking back, feel like my sister's wedding and the rush that I put around the launch, around that wedding, was really just smoke and mirrors. I was frustrated with feeling beholden to everything but fiction. What I wanted was to be writing fiction. I also had a problem because I wasn't really earning enough to take risks. I was earning enough to pay my bills, but not enough to just say, oh, fuck it, I'm never going to write nonfiction again, you know? If I switched focus to fiction and didn't release another nonfiction on a similar time scale that I had been, I could be in a lot of trouble financially. If I launched fiction and it flopped, I'd have been in trouble, even more trouble financially, because I would have had a dip in income from not releasing nonfiction. So I was, stuck between a rock and a hard place, really. And if either of those things happened and the nonfiction income slipped too far and the fiction income didn't explode, then I honestly was looking at the point where I may have had to have gone back and got another day job or picked up more freelance, one or the other. So neither were really options that I wanted, but staying in the system that I'd created also wasn't what I wanted. I really do want to be clear. It's not that I wanted to never do any nonfiction again. It's not that I never wanted to speak or do webinars. It's not that. I just wanted fiction in my life as well. So I left myself with what felt like not much of a choice, really. It was basically try fiction or continue to be miserable. And I'd already been miserable for fuck knows how many years, 8 years in corporate. So I wasn't willing to do that. The other thing is that, when I was in the day job, I took the risk on nonfiction and I got it to work. And I had enough self-belief that if I was able to get the nonfiction to work and I was able to lean into my strengths, that I really did think that I could do it again. And even if I was never going to earn 6 figures, even if I was never going to earn fuckloads of money, I believed that I could make enough that I could do fiction and non-fiction jointly. The choice I was left with was take a risk and go all in on fiction in order to stand a chance at writing it for the majority of my days, or continue half-arsing fiction and half-arsing non-fiction. And I knew, with how competitive I am, with the fact that I've got high focus, that I don't really do half-arsed anything. So even though it was a risk, even though I had to watch my income take a dip, and we've already heard, it went down by 7% on nearly 8% on the sales, and I had to endure that sales slump, which was mega upsetting for me, it was clearly worth it. Risk is a tricky thing because it is really genuinely full of uncertainty. But what I knew is that I'd rather try and fail than stay miserable and never try at all. When I did release A Game of Hearts and Heist, Ruby Rose's first book in 2023 in February, it was a brand new genre, a brand new pen name, and brand new fiction. So I had the grand total of absolutely fuck no audience whatsoever. I started from scratch, but what that enabled me to do was fully immerse myself in the market, in the genre, in studying both sides of the sapphic and then romantasy markets. So for the last 18 months then, all I've done is read, write and study romantasy and sapphic fiction. And if you want to know more on how I started that pen name, then I've got the lessons learned from the Ruby Rowe episode in the show notes. I know lots of people that all-in doesn't work. And in one way, all-in doesn't work for me because look how many things I'm doing. I'm doing special edition Kickstarters. I'm still running the podcast. I'm still speaking. I am writing fiction. So I have lots of areas in my business, but in order to start something from scratch that I wanted to really do well at, I knew that I had to close off as many of the other things as possible, at least temporarily, while it was going to take up a lot of intellection tracks. So like I say, I know all-in doesn't work for everybody, but just like I can only write one book at a time, I knew that giving myself that space and grace was going to work for me. And just to come back full circle, I'm not saying I will never write nonfiction again. Absolutely not. I really do feel like I will. I think what's interesting for me is that I feel like I'm in this growth and learning phase and, my income isn't stable yet. We're still seeing growth every month. We're still seeing, some months up, some months down, but I don't feel like we have enough months of data of this new income level for me to feel confident that, it's going to continue. I don't know how long I need for that to feel safe, but I don't right now. And so what I think that I probably will do is do something more on business, mindset, marketing. I don't really know, but I feel like I'm learning a lot. And I'm sure that I will share that in some way, shape or form. Lesson 2 then is capitalise if you can. So off the back of going all in is the realisation of what being indie really means. We are exceptionally fortunate as indie authors to be able to pivot quite literally overnight. And that is what I did. Not only did I pivot marketing to TikTok, but on the 10th of December 2023, I had my first viral video. I noticed that the amount of physical orders coming through on my KDP dashboard and Ingram dashboard had spiked far, far more than my ebooks. Now, Shopify happened to have a 3-month for £3 deal. So I figured, this seems like a really fucking good time to try. So I did. I hopped on it. Quite literally immediately, because 3 days later, I had the store set up and running. It was probably 3 of some of the most stressful days I'd had because it was not hard, but there were lots of things that you had to understand and integrate and all of the rest of it. So I put the site live, and then before I'd even managed to test the shipping myself, I had orders coming through. Thank you, TikTok. Thankfully, though, I did set it up right, but that was for definite a shit your pants moment for me. I was terrified that I'd mess it up and not set up correctly, and obviously people were already ordering, but hey, the orders went through, it worked. I got BookVault to confirm that they'd gone through okay. But really the point here is that I saw an opportunity and I capitalised on the traffic that I was generating and redirected it to my own website rather than to Amazon. So I'm sure some of you are wanting to know, what do I really mean by redirecting it? And it really is as simple as your link in your TikTok. Usually people use a link tree, which is one link with multiple links inside it. And I prioritize my website at the first. The first link they see when they open it is my website. And the majority, when you look at the statistics, the majority of people only ever click link one. So naturally that drives people to my website. And then when I'm asked in the comments on my posts, where should I buy your books? I always say my website first, always, without exception. And slowly but surely over time, that does tend to re-educate readers and purchasers and customers to go to your website. The other thing I do is I always put my website link in first in my newsletters as well. Okay, so with TikTok status in the US in jeopardy, I'm trying to take a really stoic approach to it, because obviously it is a concern given that I can more or less map my income across my TikTok stats. Therefore, if TikTok gets banned in America and between 50 and I'd say 70% of my TikTok views are US people, that would have a severe impact on my income. That makes me nervous. However, if TikTok does get banned, I will capitalise on Europe, Australia, non-EU countries, basically anywhere in the world that isn't America. And I will continue to use TikTok. And if anything, it will probably provide an opportunity because there'll be less traffic from one location, and it might increase global sales for me. So I'm trying to look at where the opportunity might be. And then the other thing is, well, I'll just try different ads, or I'll just try a different approach. There'll be another social media that pops up, and this time I will move quicker. The other thing is that Instagram is trying to compete with TikTok, which means they're giving preferential treatment to video marketing. So I'm trying to do more video marketing. I've never really been able to get Instagram to do anything for me, but in the last few weeks, I have noticed that things are changing across there, and I am managing to get more views on my content, especially when I'm consistent. So I am trying to repurpose all my content to both Instagram and even YouTube Shorts. If you see an opportunity, take it. If it doesn't work, dump it. If it does work, then rinse and repeat until it stops working, and then find something else. I think we have to take a lot of the emotion out, and I think that's what I've been working on, both in therapy and with my strengths coach, is to remove a lot of the emotional baggage from, I suppose for me in particular, failure as a number one competition or not winning, whichever way you want to frame it. Removing that baggage in order to make me more resilient, in order to make me pivot better, quicker, faster, as Becca Slime would say. I think the other thing is that as business owners, we should all be living in a perpetual state of experimentation, accepting those losses and failures in order to gain a 1% margin and the occasional big win. Because that's really how this works. We get 1% gains all the time, and 1% is still a win, because if you get enough 1% gains, suddenly you are 10xing your business. Being an indie author means being flexible. And I always joke about this with my work wife. Her adaptability is down the same area as mine. Mine's at 31, which means I don't really have any adaptability, and neither does she. But I'm trying to reframe adaptability and reframe change. I don't think we necessarily, if change or pivoting, if change doesn't work for you as a word, then reframe it to something like pivoting, right? Or strategy, or being strategic, or I don't know, but just reframe so that whatever wording or semantics work for you and make you motivated is how you are living that day-to-day life. It also means that we as indie authors have to take responsibility for everything: our income, our business, our strategy, and our products. I intentionally wrote the first Girl Game series for KU. I wanted to capitalise on whatever little organic juju, visibility juice I could get from it. And I have to say that being in KU does make a difference when you look at my ranks. My wide books, despite earning more on a fucking daily basis, are always ranked considerably lower than my KU ones. For example, my House of Crimson Hearts, which is wide and not in KU, often ranks around 20,000 in the store. However, it's also priced at $6.99, and my Girl Games books are priced at $4.99 and in KU. And I assure you that every single day House of Crimson Hearts out-earns Girl Games, without question. And the thing is, I favour bank over rank. I don't care what my rank looks like. I don't give a shit if somebody thinks, oh, well, you're not doing well because your book is at, 20,000 in the store. If one book, for example, makes 80 quid a day with a great rank of under 5,000, but another book makes £180 a day with a shitty rank, I'm going to take that shitty rank all fucking day, every single day, because 180 quid goes a lot further towards paying your mortgage than £80 does. And that is coming from a number one competition. I definitely went through a period where I had to ask myself what it was that I wanted to win. Was I bothered about rank, or was it really money? Because naturally, somebody with number one competition wants to win it all, of course. I mean, not all. Obviously, we pick our goal. I am being facetious, but for me, the answer is always money. Status is actually meaningless if you can't cover your mortgage, and I have no freedom, because that's what I value above everything else. That said, that was still a really fucking hard pill for me to swallow, because I am number one competition. Can I say that any more times? The point is that I made a tactical choice to go into KU with the first series, and a similarly tactical strategic choice to go wide with my second series. I always knew I didn't want to be all in with KU. I was using the platform as a mechanism to remove friction between new people trying my book and hopefully becoming lifelong readers of my books. Now, the thing is, the amount of sales via my website increasing and the continually decreasing KU percent meant that I had nothing to lose. And so now that I am making more money because I'm wide than I would have in KU, it has made me consider pulling the books out of KU. But I did decide not to, because it is a continual removal of friction for those that are in KU and are then happy to try new to them authors. I think this is also backed up by seeing spikes from several viral videos. For example, on one particular day, I had a video blow wide for my vampire book. And on that one single day, on that one book, I sold nearly 1,500. I think I went over 1,500 in total on that day. But one book in particular, that the vampire book, did over 1,000, well over 1,000, just that one book. But then I had another video blow with the same amount of views, but for the Kindle Unlimited book, and I earned £600 on that one day. So it's a dramatic difference. And of course, I'm not suggesting it's easy to be wide, far, far from it, or that everyone will benefit. They won't. Not all books sell wide, not all books sell in KU. But when I knew that my KU friends, KU heavy friends, were about 70 to 80% income from Kindle Unlimited, and mine was between 10 and 19%, I figured that actually I should try wide, because obviously I wasn't capitalising on KU as a main income source. The other thing that and I guess the reduction in freelance income made me do was aggressively prioritise income generating activities. And I think that, because I'd always been relying on the safety blanket of freelance, because I'd always been relying on freelance as a safety blanket, it actually created a kind of reliance that ended up turning into resistance towards taking risks. And me not taking risks is actually a problem, because I am a natural risk taker, and I am usually competing at my highest ability and capabilities when I am taking risks. So lesson 3 is that visibility is queen. I don't think I ever really understood the game that I was playing. For a long time, I've known that we need to drive traffic to our sales page. But I never really equated traffic with visibility, or, more importantly, the compounding effects of visibility. What do I mean by that? More visibility means more eyes on your work, which means a natural increase in sales. If you send 100 people to your website and 4 convert to a sale of one book, then you might make £20 in paperback sales. If you, and by that £20, I mean net profit. If you send 1,000 people to your website and 40 convert to individual sales of that one book per customer, you might make £200 in net profits in paperback sales. But what happens if you have a 15% returning customer rate? Compound. Instead of making £5 per customer, you might make £25 or £55. Compounding effect goes across everything. Visibility means that instead of 100 people seeing your book and one loving it and telling one of their friends about it, you'll have 10,000 see it, 100 love it, and maybe 50 of their friends telling their friends, of which they tell their friends, and so on and so forth. It's still more than that though, because with increased visibility comes increased opportunities too. Some of those eyes on your books are not just individuals, but BookTokers or BookBox owners, publishers, translators. It proliferates very, very quickly. I feel like we reach a certain precipice, and then once you tip over, things start to snowball and a whole host of opportunities come your way that just weren't accessible to you before. It's almost like we're climbing a giant mountain or a giant hill, whatever, with these tiny marginal gains that we get with every single footstep. Every footstep up is a 1% increase, but your legs are burning, everything hurts, you know the lactic acid is settling in, and then suddenly you're over the precipice and you can see down the hill as well as behind you. And at that point, once you tip over and start walking down the hill, everything becomes like a snowball and gets really, really, really fast. I think we often think about publishing as a game of popularity, and it isn't in that type of framework. For me, publishing has now become a game of visibility. And the caveat to that is it's not just any visibility, but the right visibility. If your readers aren't on Facebook, let it go, which I would argue they probably are given the number of people on Facebook, but I barely go and post anything there anymore because I found an easier way that brings me more joy to find them. I very rarely even open the app. If your readers aren't on TikTok, don't fucking go there. Don't bother. Just let it go. Okay, lesson 4. You'll laugh at this one. Boundaries are important. More income equals more readers equals more notifications and requests. This is a tricky one for a few reasons. First of all, we're often taught to say yes to basically everything, especially early in our careers. Yes to the opportunity, yes to the talk, yes to replying to comments and DMs. But secondly, I have, personally, a lot of yellow Clifton strengths, which means I love people. I love having access to people and to readers and them having access to me. I want to talk to them. I want to talk to you, dear listener. I want to reply to everything. Maybe not my emails. I fucking hate emails. That's never going to change. But, you know I'm joking. I want to help everybody. I want to help everybody. I want to support everybody. I want to help people make change and cheerlead for them to get their own wins. There is a problem, though, when you have rapid growth. The number of notifications, requests, invitations, everything, it increases dramatically. Not just dramatically, it's almost exponential. And it actually is more than what one person can deal with. The move from saying yes to everything and replying to everything to being more selective has been really painful for me. I am definitely, by nature, a people pleaser to a certain extent. In the extent that I want to help support and, talk to people who enjoy my books. Of course I do. What fucking author doesn't want to do that? Yes, okay, we're all introverts, but nonetheless, we want to hear from people who like our books. The problem is there's also a certain amount of fear still running through, my reactions, because I have learned to say yes to it all. And I suppose the fears are, well, if I don't reply, what if they don't like me? What if they don't read another one of my books? What if the readers go away or the money dries up? Or what if I say no to a speaking opportunity and never get another one? That fear, I think, because I am still so new to this change, it's still really present. And I think that's natural and something that I just have to work through because, I am at the point where I wake up some mornings and it can take me an hour to reply to all the notifications. Like, I don't want to spend an hour every morning on social media. I just don't. I want to get up. I want to have a coffee. I want to speak to my kid. I want to, get to my computer and at the right time. So, none of those things, none of those fears are true. First of all, not everyone shares our wiring. Not everybody has the same traumas, for want of a better word. Not everybody has the same baggage that we carry from childhood. And the other thing is, we don't control other people's reaction to us. It's not our responsibility to manage their emotions. But that's what my wiring tells me. And changing brain wiring is really, really difficult. It wasn't until I said no to answering questions in a DM for the first time a few months ago that I realised quite how much of myself I was giving away. I had like a physical reaction and a physical relief and sagging of my body at saying no to answering a question. And that was the point I realised that I'd given too much of myself away. There were no boundaries at all, like none. I had no boundary. I would answer every single question, whether they were lovely and delightful or whether they were inane. I was treating them all equally. And that lack of differentiation is a problem because I am only one person. And I can't wake up and do 45 minutes to an hour of fucking social media before I even get out of bed. I don't want to do that. The thing is, though, that boundaries are also important even with yourself. And I'm telling you this while still trying to learn these lessons. I am not finished product here. I still fail at this at times. I'm trying, I'm better, but I'm saying these things because these are the lessons that I am learning in the present tense, present time, whatever. So I think this is probably the hardest thing that I have learned this year and the hardest lesson because I'm still practicing it. But when I have less time on my plate because I am trying to focus on the books and also give myself some restorative time, which quite frankly, I really have not done of late, then I have to make changes, especially because so much of my self-worth does come from output and achievement. It's a brutal change to push myself through to not be doing the things that I think please other people. It's extraordinarily difficult to change, but I think with how close I have been to burnout this year, it is black and white at this point. And I think it's been highlighted even more by the fact that my wife took a new job and is now out of the house for an extra 2 to 4 hours a day, meaning I will just keep working until she's home. And that's not healthy. So giving myself permission to just stop and sit and read or just be, whilst it has been hard, is really important. It makes me feel lazy, like I'm wasting precious time. Hello, activator. And I feel like that anytime I do anything that's not just smashing out work. And yes, I know those things are lies that my brains are telling me, but brains are really fucking convincing and I'm still a work in progress. Okay, lesson 5, growth is brilliant and painful. The growth this year hasn't just been financial. 20 bucks to 50k Vegas was one of the most magical, life-changing weeks I think I've ever had. I will never, ever forget the gift I was given to be able to stand in front of almost 2,000 authors and tell my story. I won't forget the kind people who took the time out to come and tell me that my words mattered to them. The amount of people that took a minute to come and talk to me literally changed my life. You guys healed a piece of me, and I don't know how to explain my gratitude over that. Something internal shifted in me that week, and as a lot of you know, I've done coaching and therapy in equal measure in this year, and I've spent a long time trying to move past the doubt and the self-loathing and the lack of self-worth and the lack of self-love and all the rest of it. And honestly, these things are really hard and uncomfortable to admit, and so what do? I go and put them on a fucking podcast that goes out to the entire internet. I really think that week in Vegas was the start of an enormous internal change for me personally. Standing on stage taught me that I love to speak, that for whatever reason, I have a way with words and a way of motivating people when I talk. You might all be laughing at this because perhaps that's why you even listen to this show in the first place, but I definitely did not recognise that in me. Honestly, I find it a little bit awkward even saying it out loud. I find it very difficult to admit that I'm good at something. I literally got goosebumps. Uncomfortable, awkward goosebumps even saying it. It feels clunky and, I don't know, arrogant? I'm not sure. But Vegas was overwhelmingly positive, the overwhelming generosity and kindness of people to come and tell me that I'd had an effect on them. There were so many people, too many people for me to deny that I did something well, that I did it, I smashed it, right? It was just too overwhelming. And that is significant because it was almost like I was given scientific evidence, and that healed a bit of me and made me believe that what they were saying was true. Yeah. Do you know what? That's what it was. I think I'd spent so long. It's not like I hadn't had a compliment before. Yeah, I had. People had said nice things, but I didn't believe them. And I think because there was so much kindness in such a short space of time, I had no choice but to believe it. And yeah, so I think that's the reason that that Vegas was so significant, because it's the first time I'd ever been able to accept something good and positive about me. Oh my God, this was hard. I literally have to move on. I can't stand it anymore. One of the most significant issues I had whilst experiencing all of this explosive growth, though, was a cash flow issue. I started the Shopify shop not expecting to receive many orders, but within a couple of weeks, so by the end of December, I'd seen a £1,680 value in orders and in sales. In January, I almost doubled that and I did £3,184. Now, because of the way that most online stores work, you don't get paid. So by online store, I mean, like the Amazons and Apples of the world. You don't get paid for roughly 60 days. So that meant I had to get through February to get my usual income from those places that was higher. So since the TikTok explosion. But in February, I did a further £3,220 in sales. So why was that an issue? Well, when someone buys from you on your web store, you get charged immediately both for the cost of printing the book and whatever shipping they've chosen. And usually costs are around your profit is around 45% and costs are around 55%. So before I'd seen a cent of the boosted sales income, I had to shell out approximately £3,600 in costs. Now, yes, with the Shopify, you do get some of the money within a few days if you set the settings to that. And I think I get paid out roughly 5 days later. And then I get paid out every single day. So, I get paid on the first, I get a sale on the first and get paid on the 6th, for example. And then any sales on the 2nd come to me on the 6th. But I still had to have that money in my account. And in order to be able to get those books printed and shipped. And let me tell you, I did not have £3,500 to shell out. And I really mean it. It was a very peculiar position to be in because on paper I had several £1,000s coming into me. But in reality, I literally didn't have a penny to my name. I lived off nothing for those 2 months and I poured everything I had into the upfront costs. And in the end, I had to get a credit card for the business, which I swore I would never do after getting out of debt after university. But because I knew the money was coming in and because I have done so much work on myself, I was confident that I could trust myself enough to try again. And that is probably the first time I've ever been able to say that because my willpower is never great. But I was extremely strict with spend. Let me tell you, regardless of that, those were a couple of extremely bum squeaky moments. But what was I going to do? Stop Shopify? No, I was not going to do that. There was no way I was stopping sales that were free flowing. So I would say that this is definitely something for you guys to think about if, you would like to chase explosive growth. Not that we can ever predict it, but it's something to know might happen to you if it does, if you do experience what I've experienced. Growth means that eventually you're going to need to outsource. And this is the other thing. Or you're going to hit a brick wall with what you can do. But outsourcing in itself is a learning curve. And I think because we are so used to doing so much ourselves as indies, that the idea of handing stuff out is really hard. We have to release a part of the process that we have done and give it to somebody and trust that they're going to do it the way that you want them to. And I definitely think that I am at a crossroads of having to choose whether to do less or outsource more. Currently, I'm choosing to outsource more, but I don't know if I will do that forever. You'll have heard me talk about my people-pleasing behaviour, and I think what I've realised is that I'm bad at customer service, like really, really bad. My Becca often laughs at me for my comments on things that are less polite that come into us, which is why she does the customer service now and I don't. If there's a printing delay, but more than that, if there's a printing delay or an issue or a book arrives damaged and a customer is upset, I take that as a personal failure, even though it's entirely out of my hands. It doesn't matter. My processing is, oh, I failed the customer, and then I feel shit about it. And I was actually getting really quite low with the Shopify, and it was giving me stress to the point that I was getting magnesium deficiency twitches and things every time something would go wrong. And actually, these are not big problems, and they're very easily solved. And the thing is, when we start these writing businesses, we never expect to have to handle customer service or we just think we're going to write books. But with the size of Shopify and the fact that, a lot of fantasy romance readers have come from buying from Amazon, they currently have Amazon expectations. This means more so than somebody who's running just a nonfiction Shopify, for example, we have to deal with a lot of customer re-education. Like, I get emails every single day, and I'm not talking about thousands and thousands of pounds worth of churn on Shopify. Like I said, I'm doing 4 figures a month on Shopify, but low 4 figures. I think I've had 1 month over 5 grand. So, or around 5 grand at any rate. But that 5 grand is still generating a lot of customer service issues. So we are trying to re-educate customers so that they understand that there's a 3-day SLA. So on the printing alone, so they put the order in, the order has to be accepted, and then it's 3 days before the book is printed, let alone another day or 2 before it's shipped. So we're looking at a week or 2 plus shipping time. And if it's a foreign country, it's even longer. That's a lot of re-education and a lot of having to reteach patience. And the summary is that I am not the right person to do that. And I think the other thing, and I didn't write this in the show notes, but I think the other thing that I've learned is that give people the jobs that they like. Give them the jobs that they're good at. Don't give them everything. And I think that's probably what I was looking for a really long time. I was looking for one person to be able to do everything for me. And that's just not right. I don't want to do everything. So of course, somebody else isn't going to want to do everything either. So now I'm trying to work with more people, but with fewer tasks. Okay, lesson 6, the psychology of money, success and winning. Okay. Last, we come to the big one, because I think the psychology of money, success and winning is potentially the most controversial topic. All right. So first of all, hitting 6 figures is without doubt brilliant. I am extremely proud and extremely shocked and delighted in equal measure every fucking day since, when I look at my sales dashboard and I see the figure that I used to spend a full 24 hours trying to reach, and I see that around 9 o'clock in the morning, it blows my fucking brains out, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't know that that's ever going to get old or less exciting. I'm just so fucking surprised by this whole thing, to be perfectly honest with you all. However, there are a lot of psychological changes that happen when you hit goals, especially as a number 1 competition. And I think even more so when they're monetary goals. And I know that there are going to be some of you listening now who can't accept the things that I'm about to say. And if you need to stop listening to this podcast, that is okay. I will not hold it against you. Okay, so just remember to be nice. If you do react negatively to this, that's okay. Don't tell me, because I'll cry. But I'm going to try and be honest with you all. I have always spoken truthfully and always kept shit real with you, the good, the bad and the ugly. So I am going to tell you what I experienced. Okay, so first up then, after I had about a week of elation when I realised I was going to hit. But at that point, it was still an extremely long waiting game, because I knew if the bank holiday affected the payment dates, which I spoke about at the top of this show, and it did affect the payment dates, I was much less likely to hit 6 figures. I knew it was going to be down to the wire unless I got paid on time, which I didn't. Now, the Kickstarter and not knowing how that was going to do was also a factor. So when I ran the math partway through the Kickstarter and I realised that no matter what, I was going to break six figures, it was really strange because I knew for me to count it, I had to see that money come into my bank account and come into the Xero accounting software. When I saw it in there, that's when I was going to accept it. And so I knew that it wouldn't officially happen until the last few days of March, the last few days of my tax year. But despite that, I had done the math and trust me, I had run that math probably 15 times to try and verify and clarify and make sure that I hadn't fucked up the math. But I wanted it to say 100k, six figures in there, or it wasn't counting for my competition. That was what I was classifying as a win, and that was the end of it. But like with Shopify, I also knew that it was guaranteed to come in long before the money actually hit my account. So I was living in this really weird limbo for a while where I guess what happened is that I accepted I was going to hit the goal before the reality of that manifested. And then I fell apart. They often tell marathon runners to look for another race to run a few weeks after the marathon because of the crushing low that you get once you do it. And this is essentially what I failed to do with my goals. Because I had never anticipated hitting six figures last year, I didn't even think about what came out after that. I didn't think I was capable of hitting six figures. Like, fucking hell, this is emotional. I didn't think I was capable. I didn't think I was ever going to do it. Okay, I didn't. I had been working for so long and, nothing else other than that six-figure goal, which it was really arbitrary, to be perfectly honest with you, but it's what I set myself as a 12-year-old. And, with inflation, it's probably 1 million now. But regardless, I'd held on to that six-figure value. And yeah, whilst I know that getting to six figures is great, but actually you want to stay there as well, and that's a whole other kettle of fish and a whole other game, that didn't matter. I think this is probably more true for people who have really high competition, but in my mind, I'd won the race to six figures. And when you win, unless you readjust quite quickly, you can have a crashing low. I struggled with motivation. I was exhausted. I felt really down and unmotivated. And yeah, I know that is going to be difficult for some of you to hear. How dare I say I've hit six figures and then be unmotivated? But that is my wiring. I always have to be running a race. And this is why I burn so hot so much of the time, because my psychology is there must be a thing we are trying to win. Otherwise, I don't function. That is my driving force. That is what is deep in my soul. And once I hit that goal, I didn't have anything I was charging for anymore. And so I fell into like a small D depression. It wasn't like a clinical depression. It was like a malaise, a sadness, because I'd finished running the longest race of my life. So I ended up in coaching, in multiple coaching sessions, more frequently than I probably should have done. And what she pointed out is that I'd won and that I needed to set new goals. And the minute I set new goals, I immediately got reinvigorated. Though I would say it took me quite some time to actually reconcile the fact that money goals didn't quite sit the same way they once had. I guess that it's because at some point more just becomes more. It doesn't create any more meaning. More money provides more opportunity, more safety net, more comfort, but it doesn't change who I am. It doesn't change how I feel on the inside. It doesn't create any more meaning, it philosophically, idealistically, moralistically, right? You have to take action to make that meaning and value for the world. So yeah, I did think that hitting six figures would feel a certain way. I did think that I would want to celebrate and, do a big fanfare and that I'd be happy and bouncy and everything would be right in the world. And honestly, I feel a bit fucking stupid saying this and admitting it out loud. I feel like I was a little bit naive, you know, and a little bit embarrassed, if I'm honest, but it is what it is. And it's only when you do the hard work of coaching and therapy that you realise, unless you change the shit on the inside, the outside and those feelings and those emotions don't change. So when I got there and I realised that I'd hit the goal, I realised exactly how goal-driven I am, and that 6 figures was completely arbitrary. And I know why I write, but I had to figure out why I was pushing for monetary goals. And this is where things have changed. The conclusion that I've come to is the same one that I think I've always had. I just feel differently about it now. I am seeking total freedom, physical, mental, emotional, financial, and any other all I can think of. So the goal now is to buy years of freedom. I don't think I will ever retire, but I do want to know that if I chose not to work, that I could. So I've calculated a modest living figure for a year and broken that figure down into months. And now I have bingo cards, and every time I save the equivalent of a month's income, I put a literally shiny unicorn sticker on the bingo card. Each month is a goal, which means each year has 12 goals, but that year is the bigger goal, right? So fill the card, get 12 stickers on the bingo cards. And at the moment I've printed in colour, I got a professional company to print them, and I printed 10 bingo cards, and I want to collect the 10 bingo cards. So 10 years of freedom, 120 months of financial freedom. So when I save that, then I'll save another 10 until I am FI, essentially financially independent. I don't want to retire early out of that FIRE logo acronym. Anyway, and then there's the real elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about, which is excess cash. When you get all of this money in your bank, it's obviously tempting to buy a new this, get a new that. But I have lived with debt, and a lot of debt, and I have no desire to go back there. But I also don't really have enough financial education to know what to do. And so I had to re-educate myself really quickly. And it's in large part thanks to Joanna Penn and her mentorship and her constant discussion openly of money on her podcast and giving book recommendations on her podcast and all the resources that I am in a better position now. For the first time in my adult life, I have a pension, which, I admit I didn't before, which is a bit embarrassing, but I didn't have enough money. I didn't have enough excess cash to invest in a pension. I have some modest savings, and each month that passes, I add a little bit more. You would think that I suddenly had wads of cash in the bank, but with an increase in income comes an increase in extra costs. We've talked about some things like, the advertising, and we've had to fix some things personally, whether, in our family life, which I'm not going to talk about. And obviously some of those have been, some of the money has been reinvested back into the business. But as each month passes and more income and the income stays at the level it's at, the excess cash is building up. And we're approaching the point where that will cause problems. And they're not really problems that anybody thinks polite to talk about. Like, how do you take money out of your business in the most tax efficient way possible? Like, that is a problem. When you've worked as hard as we have as a community, and then you can't take the money out of your account without having to lose half of it, that hurts, to be honest. Obviously, we want to pay tax. We've all done it all our lives. Tax and death, right? It's the only two consistent things in life. We all want to invest in the NHS or the police services or the roads or whatever. But also we want to be able to have the money that we've earned. I also had a number of other financial issues arise. I had to change accountants. I had to get a bookkeeper, and I've had to register for VAT. All of those things happened in a very short space of time. And those changes took me almost like a month of time to deal with. Like essentially I'd had some bad advice, which led me to believe another thing I was led to believe was that I was only allowed one business account. So my hashtag focus was in agony trying to separate out money into different pots, and I couldn't because I only had one bank account that was like a high street bank that didn't even have like pot capacity inside it where you can put money into little pots and stuff. Thankfully, I discovered that you could have several accounts. So now I have an account for tax, an account for VAT, and all of this stuff. But this other major accounting issue that I don't want to talk about on the podcast caused me no end of pain. It essentially took me, I think, 3 to 4 working weeks of time to fix. I actually don't think I've ever been more stressed over it. And I didn't really feel like I could talk about it publicly either. I'm not a numbers person, and I got very worked up and stressed because I couldn't handle all of that shit that was happening. And all that was happening whilst I was trying to finish books and promote books and publish books. And it was a lot, to be perfectly honest. I definitely had a few tantrums and shed a few tears. So while I will never, ever, ever say that earning more is a bad thing, it is a positively fucking brilliant thing. Thank you very much, TikTok and the universe. But there are issues that come up that cause headaches, that require you to learn new skills, new things, new tax laws. And they require you to make an unfathomable number of executive decisions. I've actually come to realise that I'm not in burnout. I have gotten close to decision fatigue. I have had an extremely large number of decisions to make very, very quickly. And that is the exhaustion that I've been experiencing. Because on the days I don't have to make any decisions, funnily enough, I end up with loads of energy at the end of the day. And then there's reconciling the following 2 things. Number 1 is that I work the same level of hard now as I did a year ago, but now I earn more. And that was a strange thing to try and process because nothing really changed on a day-to-day basis. I still do my job. I still change the dishwasher. I still feed my kid. I still have to do the washing, so I still struggle to write some days too. I still vomit words on other days, but the bank balance is different. I don't know what I thought would be different. I don't know if I thought everything would feel more meaningful, but nothing is. And I suppose that was a surprise to me. And the other thing that was difficult is accepting that I was a 6-figure author. It was extremely uncomfortable. And to be perfectly honest, I think I'd spent so long essentially wanting to get there, a decade of intentional drive and work, wanting to reach that point. But actually a decade is long enough to get to the point where psychologically I'd stopped believing it was possible. I didn't think it was possible. I thought that what I was earning was going to be it. And before I say this, please understand that I do recognise that the position that I was in was still one of extreme privilege, right? I won the geographical birth lottery by being born in the UK to a more or less middle class family. Even if I wasn't in a position of wealth, I was still very lucky and very privileged. So I guess I kind of thought that we'd have to save all year for our one holiday. We would just about be able to pay our bills. We'd have enough, but that was it. I thought we would never have savings. I didn't think we'd ever have a backup plan. I was always that person that was in fear that my car would break and I wouldn't have the £400 I needed to fix it. There were more than double digit, well, no, maybe not more than double digits. There were more than single digit numbers of months where I was shitting the bed about whether or not, how we'd pay for a new boiler, how we would fix the car, whatever. We were fine. We weren't in dire straits. But we were always worried. We always lived with the burden of financial worry on our shoulders. And I don't think I ever thought that would go away. And I am still acutely aware of the fragility of business and the whiplash way the market changes, and even technology in our market. And so I'm trying to be as conservative and strategic as I can with this newfound success, without also stopping myself from having a few moments of happiness and celebration. And for those who are always asking me how I'm going to celebrate, I do feel like I have celebrated this year. We are going to New Zealand. We are having this big family holiday. You know, we went to Venice. I brought myself a nice pair of boots. You know, so it's been a fucking journey, let me tell you that. Which is why lesson 7, no matter what, this is always better. This is the same lesson that I come back to every year. And I hope that I continue to come back to it year after year, because this is the lesson that reminds me to never, ever get complacent. I want to always feel gratitude for the readers, for you guys as listeners, for every single person who has ever supported me on this journey. I want to feel that gratitude forever, because I want to stay here forever. I want to continue living this life of working for myself. This year, though, feels even more poignant. I always share the photo from my darkest day in my corporate life. But this year, I bring you my own little rebellion photo, because what episode is complete without a rebellion? So for listeners who don't normally look at the show notes, please do go and look at the show notes this time. It has the original photo and it has a new photo. I talked about this particular new photo and showed it in my keynote at Vegas. So in my Vegas talk, I showed the original photo. And then in order to show the complete journey that I'd been on, I made my wife drive me back to where I used to work on a Saturday when I knew for a fact that the building was shut. And we, I guess, illegally snuck onto private property and took a photo of me in the tree that I nearly had a nervous breakdown in when, in the middle of winter, I'm sure you will have heard me talk about this, I cried in the middle of a tree in the middle of winter on the phone to one of my parents, sobbing. And so we went back and I stood in front of that tree in branded merch with a Starbucks, giving the fucking tree the middle finger. And that is the photo that I want to share this year, the one that I ended the keynote with. No one said being a creative would be easy. They didn't say it was without risk or emotion or rejection or growth or change. This life, if you choose to lead it, is grueling and so hard. But as much as it is those things, it is also so full of beauty and growth and inspiration. It is filled with people who are brave enough to keep going, with people who refuse to be broken, who refuse to be knocked down 9 times and stay down. They get up a 10th time. I am constantly in awe of you listeners, constantly in awe of the incredible humans in this community who write their truths, who continue to fight for visibility, because deep down they know there's a kid out there that wants to be an astronaut and that their words will inspire them to keep going. Your words matter. They give hope to cleaners and carers, to little girls who want to be princesses when they grow up, and other girls that want to be a kick-ass assassin. We save people from dark days in corporate offices and sick beds. We make people smile and laugh and cry. We are fucking magicians, guys, and each of you will change someone's life with your words. I will never take this life for granted. I will always appreciate it on the good days, the bad days, and all the days in between. Because no matter what, this is better. This is the life I dreamed of, and I am so fucking grateful for it. Thank you, and here is to another year. Don't forget to tune in and subscribe on your podcatcher. And when you have a moment, please leave a review.